Hi, this is Holly from the Sweet Simple Things, and welcome to my channel where we make healthy and nourishing recipes the whole family will love. Make sure you hit subscribe to see all the latest recipes. Today I'm going to show you how I make some whole wheat sourdough cherry knots. These are a super tasty little sourdough treat. So I'm going to start by autolyzing my flour. This is 100% whole wheat. I'm using red wheat that I fresh milled. You can use white wheat. I've used that as well, and it's great, especially if you want like a lighter feel. I'm just mixing the flour and the water together until all of the flour is absorbed into the water. But as you can see, this is not a very wet recipe. It will be very shaggy at this point. Go ahead, cover it and let it sit for 30 to 45 minutes before you mix in the rest of the ingredients. After it sits, you can add about 30 grams of maple syrup, about a half a stick of softened butter, 50 grams of sourdough starter, and about 10 grams of salt. I'm using pink salt. Now, because this is such a stiff dough, you're going to want to use the paddle to get this mixed together first. So put it back in your mixer with the mixing paddle and just stir until all of the ingredients are evenly combined. This might take a couple minutes. Once it's evenly mixed, you can remove the paddle and put on the kneading hook. And what's nice about this recipe is we're just going to knead until it's smooth and supple and nicely uniform and come together, but we don't need to knead it until you get like a window pane test. You don't need to knead it forever. We just want it smooth, supple. It's a pretty stiff dough, so it'll take a little bit of time to get it nice and smooth, but once it's nice and smooth, you're done. You don't need to worry about if you developed enough gluten or anything like that, because these knots will come together just fine without having like passed the window pane test or anything like that. So we're just going to get it together until it's nice and smooth. So I'm going to stop it here, and then I'm going to remove the dough from the mixer, and I'm going to put it in a straight-sided glass container for the bulk fermentation. And I like to use a glass container so I can see the rise, and straight sides so that I can accurately measure the rise. So I'm going to put it in here, pat it down. This will be stiff. That's how it's supposed to be. You're gonna cover it and let it ferment until it rises 50%, and that took me about 12 to 14 hours, but it could vary for you depending on how warm your house is. Okay, so this would be the next day typically at this point. Once your dough's risen about 50%, you can go ahead and divide it into 12 equal pieces. I'm using my food scale so that I can accurately weigh each piece so that they're all pretty much exactly the same size. So they're going to be between like, I believe 63 and 64 grams. After you have 12 balls, what we're going to do is we're going to flatten them out one by one, put a little jam in there, a little bit of cinnamon, and then you're going to pull the top down, pinch it to seal it, and then fold it in half over itself. Pick it up, give it a little squeeze, and lightly tug it as you do that so that you can pull it until it's at least about 6 to 8 inches long, and then tie it in a knot. So I'll go ahead and do this a few more times here so you can just watch and get a feel for how I do it. It's really just kind of finding what works for you to make this happen. I've tried it a few different ways as I've tested this recipe, and this is the way I like the best. Once all the knots are tied, you're going to cover them in plastic wrap, and you really want to make sure they're well covered because this dough will dry out. Then let it do its final proof for about 90 minutes to 2 hours or so. Then put it in the oven at 400 degrees for 10 minutes. While they're baking, you can make your cream cheese glaze. So put some softened cream cheese, powdered sugar, a little bit of vanilla extract, and 2 tablespoons of milk into a mixing bowl, and then whisk it all together until it's nice and smooth. You'll know the knots are fully baked when they're at least 190 degrees. This will be probably about 10 minutes. It could even be a little bit less. After they've cooled about 10 minutes so that they're cool enough to touch, you can pick up each one and dip it in the cream cheese glaze and then set it on a platter or cooling rack, whatever you want to do. And that's it. These are really tasty. So they're kind of like a little bit less sweet than a donut, but they do have this glaze, and obviously the jam gives it a really nice sweet essence in the dough. And my husband is crazy for these. These are a really delicious treat. They're super good warm, so make sure you eat one fresh out of the oven, but they're also good cool later in the day, and I think they're very good the next day. But beyond day 2, I don't recommend them. So whatever you're not going to eat in the first day or 2, I would put in the freezer and then pull them out to thaw for an hour or 2 before you want to eat them. So this is a super fun recipe. It's not as hard as it looks. They're really tasty and really wholesome too. I hope you guys enjoy.